Alrighty, I think we've got a bit of a busier room now. So to kick off, I'll introduce myself. My name is Mike, and I'll be your moderator for today. I am the managing director at Tactical, a social-first creative agency that's based in Dubai, UAE. Today, we're here to talk about augmented reality, which from now on will be referred to as AR for the next hour or so, and how this technology has evolved from a novelty to necessity for brand experiences in the world we now live in. Today, I'm joined by some amazing guests to make up an exceptional panel that will be joining this webinar. And they'll be sharing their experience working with AR and how it's increasingly playing a role in how businesses and brands connect with their audiences. I hope you're as excited to hear from them as I am, and I'm sure you'll walk away from this session with a clear, practical learning of how you can apply this technology immediately and unlock a world of creativity. First up, I'd like to introduce Mr. Vish Badiani. He's the creative strategy lead at Snap Inc. MENA. Vish, do you want to just quick intro on yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you for joining. I have been with Snapchat now for 2 years. I come from a planning and strategy background, creative agency side. And on our day-to-day, we're basically working with brands and advertisers across the region to help them activate their campaigns on Snapchat. So yeah, thank you very much for the intro, Mike, and I will pass on to John.
Next up, we have, do you want me to do a little intro? We've got John Maloy, Regional Creative Director from AUDITOIRE. Over to you. Sorry to cut you there.
No, that's fine, that's fine. Yeah, I am the Creative Director at AUDITOIRE, an experiential agency that operates across the region. French-born agency, but part of the OMNICOM experiential group. And just like Vish, I have a background in the strategic planning, advertising side of the business, and now fully experiential.
Excellent, thank you, John. And lastly, but not least, we have Hattan Nassief, Chief Business Officer at Midwam. Can we get a quick intro on yourself as well, please?
Sure, Mike, thanks. Well, thank you everyone for being here. Again, my name is Hattan Nassief. I'm the Chief Business Officer of Midwam. I actually come from a financial background. Most of my studies and my work before or during the past period before joining Midwam was related to banking. But throughout my career, I've been looking for impact. And this is where experiential design came in board. This is where Midwam came into the picture. And I joined Midwam technically from day 2, which was around 8 years ago. Right now, we work at Midwam as experience designers, and we look create basically impact by creating experiences that engage specific target audience.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Hattan. And thank you to all our panelists. Some basic housekeeping before we kick on. Please ask questions, ask throughout the talk. We'll have time at the end to address them. So we'll have a Q&A in about 40 minutes time. Leave some time at the end to run through those. And in this session, we want you to be involved. We'll be running a series of polls throughout that will be discussed as a panel. So we'll add those to the Q&A, and then, yeah, please engage and we'll discuss it together. To kick off, we should probably answer the first question: what is AR, and what do you know, and do you know how prevalent it is in your everyday life? Now, you know, yes, we are here to talk about the subject novelty to necessity. And I'm just going to change through to my Snapcam. And this is probably the most visual interpretation of what I can explain to be AR. And again, in this instance, it is a novelty. However, our specialists today will be talking about how it transfers to much more of a necessity and what that looks like. Platforms like Snapchat have really pioneered this experience on mobile. And to kick off in terms of understanding how that engages with an audience, Vish, I'd love to get your input in terms of, I guess the first question being, with Snap pioneering how AR experiences have evolved with consumers, from a platform point of view, could you give us an idea on how some of these trends are actually changing the audience behavior today, and maybe more specifically to the region?
Yeah, sure. I think the way that consumers have changed the way they shop over the last few months is undeniable. There was already a shift happening. People were shifting more and more towards kind of digital experiences and online purchasing. But I would say the last 6 months has really accelerated that. There have been a number of surveys and studies released by people far cleverer than me, saying that this is a year where the adoption rate of e-commerce has been accelerated by 5 years in 6 months. So beyond that actual shift, I think the way people are interacting with things in store, they're interacting with people, has all changed. Twice before interacting with a sales assistant. So in that regard, augmented reality and demand and interest in augmented reality has increased dramatically from a brand point of view, as a way to kind of still also, I think, as a way to kind of short circuit the buyer journey, a role that very few other forms.
Sorry, I lost you there for a bit. You're saying it plays a unique role?
Yeah, sorry, plays a unique role in moving people from browsers to buyers, I think. I think it's short-circuiting the way people shop, and helping them really have a brand experience, yet also move towards actual buying and conversion.
Absolutely. I really like that point on acceleration and how it's shifting the buying experience. John, on a storytelling level, or even just, I mean, you work with amazing brands as it is in terms of experiences. How has AR changed experiences for your audience, and how has that acceleration or shift been recognized for you guys?
Well, from an experiential point of view, I think that shift has happened in two very different ways. From a strategic level, the nature of my craft is to be able to activate the moment in time. It's virtually impossible for an experiential agency to be across the entire funnel at the same time through one physical experience. So from a strategic standpoint, AR has given me the tools and ability to start my conversation way before and finish way after. So essentially giving me the opportunity to talk to my audience for a much wider spectrum of the whole funnel, if you will. And from a tactical point of view, I think it's allowed me to put the product at the heart of the experience again. So I know we often call ourselves, brand creatives, brand strategists, and I'll have to admit, the product is often an afterthought in the creative process. You come up with a brand story, you come up with narrative, and then, but we need to put the product back at the heart. And AR allows us to do that now in exceptional fashion. I don't believe there is a single more efficient tool to highlight a product USP in an educational or entertaining fashion than AR. And in that sense, I think AR is essentially a superpower, to Vish's point, for product USPs. I can say more to my audience about a lipstick in 30 seconds with an AR filter than I ever could before that. So yeah, I'm all in with Vish on this one. It is a superpower that hijacks the entire funnel.
Awesome. I can see that there's some conversations going on the chat. We actually want to publish our first poll asking, have you guys ever engaged with AR in the last 30 days? So if you can just please publish that through, we can respond and we'll come back to that. In the meantime, Hattan, if you could just give us a bit of an idea, knowing that you're based in, or Midwam is based in Saudi and you're currently in Jeddah. In your opinion, how willingly has that been? How willingly has the audience in Saudi adopted AR?
All right, John. We all know that the Saudi market basically in the past have adopted tremendously and easily with technologies, either products or services, including Snapchat adaptation, other social media platforms, and so on. So adaptation is high. And I like the point where Vash basically emphasized on what the pandemic accelerated this. I'd like to take it from another angle, because some countries around the world have a problem from adaptation of point of view of people's behavior. The other part could be from digital literacy point of view. So people are either old in age or other reasons that does not allow them to get into such technologies, or I'll call them experiences at the end of the day. So that's one. As you mentioned, and you showed earlier, the filter that you just showed is there. People use it. The thing is, people don't know that it's augmented reality. They use it, they enjoy it, they use it for multiple purposes, but they don't know that it's called augmented reality. So this shows an indication that people at the end of the day would focus on the impact of the technology as a user, not the name of it or the technicality of it. So like John mentioned earlier, the AR allowed him to put the product in the center. I would take it from another angle. We put people or humans in the center. And then that will allow John and the team, the people, to build different worlds around it, different layers around it, and boils it back to the objective of using it and the impact required rather than the tech itself.
Okay. Can I jump in?
Yeah, absolutely, please.
I completely agree, and I embrace that point of view. It is true, while it is a fantastic tool to put the product back at the heart of the narrative, it is the ultimate person-centric tool. There is no question about it. It requires an active participation of our audience. This is not programmatic. This is not a social media campaign. This is not an influencer push. In order for me as a consumer to interact with an AR filter or whatever people might think it is or call it, it requires my buy-in. That's first and foremost. And in order for me to enjoy it, it needs to be done for me. So that nuanced and balanced point of view that a brand needs to develop on their audience to create the ultimate AR experience is why it's so efficient, because you can create something that's just there. It's a vanity tool. And well, if that's the type of brand you are and you can afford to do that, then good for you. But the good brands, the smart brands, and the meaningful brands actually get to dwell and dig deeper into what exactly their audience needs.
Yeah, I think that's a super interesting point. I don't think we're here to promote the technology. Like AR in itself is not what I'm here to tell you and talk to you about. It's more the benefits that AR can deliver for your audiences. It's about putting yourselves in their shoes and thinking about how you can help them with technology. Not the technology in itself is just a means to an end. So yeah, like I couldn't agree more. Where the smartest marketeers are really thinking about, right, as my customer goes through their purchasing journey, and we've developed campaigns for big ticket luxury items like Lincoln cars, or for more kind of everyday items, like lipsticks and foundations. Like regardless of what that product might be, your customer goes through a process as they go on the actual journey. And if you can find where AR fits in to that conversation and ensure that it's delivering real value as opposed to just being there for the sake of it, I think that's where we're seeing real traction and real performance.
Awesome. And I think
one last line here is, I think one of the reasons why it adapts quickly is it does not require any additional setup or a hardware from the end user point of view. I mean, they got their phones, their tablets, and boom, activate Snapchat, activate whatever product experience that is there, point at an object, and then voila, the whole world changes around you and you're engaged with that world. So I think this is a valid point that basically allows people to, either from a brand side of point of view, push for AR, and the users adapting to it.
I love it. Awesome feedback so far. And circling back to benefits and value that you guys have been discussing here, I think it would be really timely to see how we can, correspond the benefits of AR to brands. John, just to kind of circle back on some of the storytelling that you guys have been doing. I know that we've worked on campaigns before with Mac and Estee Lauder. Are you able to share any examples of how AR has played a role in the campaigns you've worked on, and maybe more specifically where it's become a real necessity in the storytelling you're trying to communicate?
Yeah, so going back to the Mac LC, which was actually our first collaboration together, was about a couple of years ago, I think. So for me, as a marketeer back then, AR was pretty foreign. So it was my first venture into that realm. The real added value that AR brought to the table for our physical experience. Oh, I'm terribly sorry. I have two guard dogs. One is a white little sheep. Vishal, ça suffit. There you go. Sorry. the real added value it brought to the table is that campaign essentially between one of the most exciting beauty brands in the world, MAC, and a unique artist, El Cid, was to really blur the lines between product, arts, culture, makeup, etc., and lifestyle. The AR lens did exactly that for us physically. We had, I think, an experience with about 200 people, which back then was not a lot of people. It was just a happy few. And now it seems like a lot of people in one same place. But what that did for us is through that activation, we essentially managed to reach in a little 2 hours over 1 million people, I believe, through that one experience. So we had taken one of his art pieces and it became the trigger to reveal the hero item in that collaboration between Mac and El Cid. So I might say it is a bit gimmicky. I tend to not think so, because it did exactly what that campaign was supposed to do, which is blur the lines between art, makeup, culture, and lifestyle. And I believe that campaign, had a second wind in stores, because you guys developed a beauty lens for people to try on the collection without having to actually apply it onto their face in stores, and was incredibly successful as well. To bring it back to today, if 2 years ago was my first AR experience to bring forward to a client, in the past year or so, I do not believe that we've had a single deck leave the creative department that did not have an AR component at some point in it, whether it was to start the conversation, end the conversation, or expand on that conversation. It's, calling something a necessity means, that's it, it's a stamp of approval, it's always going to be there. I think that's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm saying is when it makes sense, and most often times it does make sense at some point, we integrate it in all of our work.
That's awesome. Actually, I'd like to put our second question out to the audience now, asking whether they've integrated AR into marketing campaigns before. And on the back of you mentioning that you've used it or you're applying it to pretty much every single presentation that's going out now, is just a testament to show how far that's come. And yeah, working on those campaigns with you before is actually a great way to explore how that can launch an activation, but also have sustained life cycle within it. Hattan, moving on to the work that you guys are doing at Midwam, are you able to share any really exciting campaigns that you guys have worked on, and also maybe give me a bit more insight on how AR is playing a role for brands in Saudi?
Sure. I'll share an example we did during the pandemic. As you are aware, Eid is a very important occasion for us here. And this year we were in Saudi specifically, we were not able to share such a moment with our family members. Just small groups, not bigger groups that we usually do. So at Midwam, we looked at it again from a human-centric point of view, and the objective of such augmented reality experience that we've created is to allow people to be together while they're not together, share their moments of Eid with their friends, families, and so on. So we got very good response on that. Again, using AR as a tool, the objective in the beginning should be clarified. Why are we using this experience? The journey should be identified. The target audience should be identified. And then the technology as a tool to be as a layer on top of it. Just to add to John, sometimes augmented reality is not the right approach. And I'm sure as a marketeer, and he knows that IR is not always the right approach. Once we identify the story, the target audience, and the journey that we want to take them with, and the impact at the end of the day, then AR could be a fit, could not be a fit. It's just a tech at the end of the day, as we all agree. Taking another example, at Midwam, we created an experience that we called Into the Kingdom. This experience was used locally and globally during the World that took place in 2018. The idea was to basically, as a brand, talking about Saudi culture. So it's still a brand like any other brand. You need to treat it basically in a way that is a brand and communicate the messages accordingly. The idea was that basically Moscow people don't know much about Saudi and vice versa. We want to show them that we have culture that is roots beyond 300, 400 years and history and so on. So we created an experience called Into the Kingdom. Augmented reality was one of the tools that we used. It allowed people to live a moment, as John put it, It allows you to put stop time and put people in a moment. We did that and allowed them to visit one of the UNESCO sites in Saudi. Within 20 to 30 minutes using augmented reality and other technologies, we reached to a point where we allowed people not just to connect with the brand, but change their perception about the brand. So this shows basically, again, augmented reality as a tool gives you the opportunity to open new worlds, new doors, but it's a tool, yet the impact is important. The impact we got at the end of the day, wow, we thought Saudi. We have 5 UNESCO sites in Saudi. So we took those UNESCO sites with us. We allowed people to experience it, move around it. So when they remember, they're not going to remember augmented reality. They're not going to remember a phone or a tablet once they leave our area. They can remember a UNESCO site that they visited in Saudi, and that Saudi has history and culture that deep roots that are beyond 90 or 100 years old. So impact to us was achieved at the highest level because perception was changed there. Not about a specific product, but as a nation, which to me is very difficult to do rather than a product itself. So that's one story that I wanted to share with you guys.
I know it sounds like a really, sorry, yeah, go John.
I was going to say, what's great with this specific campaign is that they truly got Saudi to travel the world, and not necessarily the world didn't have to travel to Saudi. And I think it opened up the doors as well for people traveling to Saudi after. If you see it, you believe it. And AR does just that. It creates what doesn't exist or reinforces what is the subtle undertones of a product or a country for that matter, and magnifies it like never before. And that's, I think, the great beauty of that campaign and the usage of AR.
Just how people brain function, right? As humans, we remember things. Whatever we remember are actually moments in life, right? Graduation, kids, marriage, stuff like that, either emotional, this hard decision that you need to take, career shift and stuff like that. So when we use such experiences, we design them for people to reach certain feeling, emotions related to a brand or an experience by itself.
Yeah, I think there's some really great undertones there of unlocking memories, unlocking experiences. Vish, maybe you can extend in terms of how on a technical level or the tech that Snap is rolling out, things like, foot tracking and machine learning, how it's unlocking even further in the CPG space or brand experience and showcasing real utility.
Yeah, I mean, I think the travel examples are really interesting. We recently ran a campaign for DTCM during the pandemic, which was running internationally to try and help people understand what it's like to travel to Dubai. We've done similar things in Saudi with Winter at Tantora and the Royal Commission of Al-Ula. Again, like taking people and transporting people to Saudi so that they can actually experience it for themselves and again break down those kind of barriers. CPG specifically though is also a space where we've seen a huge amount of traction. Again, often the angle into the brief might be slightly different. So we've had briefs around hey, we're a food CPG brand and we want to connect with audiences who are into gaming, right? So we've developed augmented reality games that heavily feature the product. We've done this with Puck. We've done this with Khouri. We've done this quite recently actually with Arla for both Lurpak and for organic milk. So yeah, I think I guess if there's one thing I want marketers who are listening in out is the idea that AR isn't limited to a certain vertical. It's not limited to a certain use case. Like it's similar to video. I can develop AR experiences for you that will drive awareness and help you launch a product. I can develop AR experiences that are more bottom of the funnel, that either drive virtual footfall or product trial. And I can do stuff in the middle, which starts to bring your products to life and explain why someone should buy them and how they're made and what they're all about. So yeah, I think that's a really important point to make. Has adoption been greater across certain verticals? From our point of view, not really. I think that the technology that you're referencing now, we've just launched a tool a few months back called Snap ML, which is Snap Machine Learning. And it basically allows you to feed in image data into our software and therefore start interacting with the real world. So instead of augmented reality purely living on the phone, all of a sudden you're actually able to point your phone at things in the real world and see augmented reality applied over it. So for example, we developed a lens that ran globally for Gucci. Obviously Gucci sell very expensive sneakers, and they worked with us to develop technology where no matter who you are, what your foot may look like, which angle you may point your phone at your foot, it will recognize exactly what you're doing, and it will place the shoe on your foot regardless and let you see what it's like to wear 2 or 3 different styles of Gucci sneaker. This is where there's definite advancement going on. We've got another lens, organic lens running in India at the moment, which again, the machine has been fed with visual data around household objects. So you can basically point your phone at any household object and it will give you the Hindi translation back for that object. So I guess we're moving from a space where, yes, it's very functional and it's very effective and it's starting to be a tool that advertisers can use, to being something which starts to overlay elements into your real world and provide you with real, genuine value.
That's awesome. Yeah, some really great examples there. In terms of, I guess these are just very powerful in terms of impact. Are there any sort of results to campaigns between the three of you that you can share in terms of just giving some impact beyond just the memory or the occasion? I know that when we've done campaigns in the past, we've wanted to see how we can raise awareness. However, we've seen it actually have impact across the full funnel and actually lead to conversions on at the end of it. Do you guys, between you, anyone have any examples of how that has impacted campaigns in a much more performance-led as well?
Well, Hattan's the money man, right? So yeah, like I think what we've certainly seen, I'd say in the last few months, nearly every campaign needs to deliver ROAS. Return on advertising spend has become like one of the key metrics. I think if you go back 2 or 3 years, Snapchat lenses were just about doing a big bang, it was about fireworks. Now we're seeing really good ROAS. We have public case studies available for the likes of Khouri, which is a big makeup brand. We've got public case studies available for the likes of Badiani. These are kind of performance plays. These are all about conversion, and they're seeing lenses deliver greater returns than almost any other format. So yeah, we're definitely seeing effectiveness as well as impact.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of success as well when it comes to like brand in hand moments, such as the playtime you get out of an AR experience far exceeds what you'd naturally get out of a thumb stopping video or anything like that. So yeah, just great to hear some references in terms of how that's been successful. We've got some results coming through for our polls, so please keep them coming. We're gonna move into our next theme, which is actually how brands can adopt AR for today and the future. We'll be running the next poll, which is, would you consider AR for upcoming campaigns? That'll be being displayed shortly. And I guess for us, what we see as an agency is we're always working to try and see how we can remove the barriers, reduce costs and time to engage, for brands to be able to engage in AR, so that's more accessible than ever before. So that can help us, build for a future where AR is better integrated within campaigns. Hattan, for you, how do you see the role of AR developing for brands in KSA?
Well, let's start with saying that in the past 5 or 7 years, if you look at the studies, they were expecting VR, virtual reality, to be mainstream more than AR. But somehow in the middle, AR surpassed it. You don't see people talking about, at least from the mass perspective, about virtual reality. The talks are there, but given that there's, again, difficulty in adapting to additional hardwares and so on, it's less. AR is booming, right? It's about basically how to use it and what's the impact again you want to use it for. This is where the companies will have difficulties, either making it or breaking it. In the past, people or brands have tried to push AR as an emerging technology, and it's cool to have it with us as a brand. It was not focused on the product. It wasn't focused on the brand. It was focused purely on tech. Let's have it. We're going to look nice. We're going to look cool if we have AR. So that's where I think their experience went wrong. And that's where we asked them again, would you experience AR again? I think their answer would be no, because it was used wrong. The objective was wrong. Story was wrong. And the impact was wrong. So the whole equation was wrong. So I would suggest, and as we usually do for Midwam, is identify what you want first, and then build the story, the journey, and so on. So impact of AR is just the beginning. I mean, we've seen how Pokemon went viral. That's, I guess, when the first people, and time in the world where people got, okay, they understood that such thing exists. And I think most of the people, again, if you ask them who are gamers, who went into Pokemon, they wouldn't know this is augmented reality a couple of years back. But yet, they adapted it and it went viral. The story was nice, the usability was nice, and it clicked. So where this is going? It's going beyond what we have right now, I'm sure. Just to add one layer here of data, back to point number 2, the impact of AR through campaigns. I'll give you 2 examples, quick ones. One, the one we did in Moscow. People visited Saudi after our campaign in Moscow. They saw things that are related to what they like, right? Interest, something that exists. There's infrastructure, there's sites to go to, beyond what they used to know. So they decided to visit Saudi. That's impact right there. When it comes to filters of Eid as well, we had an increase of people converting from AR and the filter to visiting our website and understanding what we do. So that's another impact right there. AR is just the beginning. What we're seeing now is again, gonna get better and better. Of course, with the technology allowing us to do more.
Yeah, there are a couple of points actually. Like John said something earlier about the actual experience. It goes back to this whole concept of permission marketing, right? Like if I as a user give you permission to market to me, and lenses almost you are required to opt in. I cannot serve an AR lens experience to you. You have to physically open. In our case, you have to physically open an app. Probably in these guys' cases, you have to physically scan a code, or you have to literally go into an experience. You have to open the carousel. You have to choose the branded icon. You have to play with it. You have to save it. You have to send it. Now, like that is a massively high intent audience. Like versus someone who's watched your video that you're retargeting, or versus someone who's seen a banner ad that you may be paying to retarget. Like that audience is way, way more likely to convert, and we've seen that in studies as well. I think the other thing that came up was well, you know, where's all this going? Like, yeah, look, you know, it's great, and you know, I mean, really, we still are scratching the surface of where AR can go. You know, we're announcing over the coming weeks, you know, shared virtual experiences where, like, I think last year we launched landmarkers, and then there's one at Alula, where almost you can create a 3D skin over a landmark. They already exist over places like the Eiffel Tower, the Flatiron Building in New York. You know, we've got 7 or 8 of these around the world already. We're now going to move into actually mapping whole neighborhoods. So you could imagine, you know, me, you, and John open our Snapchat, and we can actually play a game together on the streets. And it's just being launched right now in Carnaby Street in London. Beyond that, I can leave a message or a photo on a building for John or you to find as we go through the city. I mean, like the possibilities really are endless. So yeah, I'm super excited and very lucky, I think, to be kind of working in this space.
I bet. I mean, there's some really interesting points there. The mention of Pokemon and that becoming a tipping point for, I guess, a mass understanding of how AR can play a role in contribute in an experience and storytell. So I think, yeah, given the context of what's to come on Snap, then, you know, that just feels like it's almost just amplifying and growing even more so. John, from a brand point of view, how can brands get the most value out of adopting AR into their campaigns? You know, what do we look for in terms of a measurement or of sorts?
I think the value brands can get, and the way for them to make their dollars work harder for them is by starting to be honest with themselves and then truly understanding who their audience is. It's about designing with purpose, right? Who am I designing for and what am I designing towards? And I think, you know, that point's been made a few times today. It's not about AR, it's about who it's for and what it's for. I don't have specific numbers on one campaign, but that was my personal aha moment with AR and marketing. When L'Oreal a couple of years back, or maybe 3 years back now, I can't really remember, their makeup filter application, they understood very well that there was a true barrier for people to engage with purchasing beauty online if they hadn't tried it on, or if they couldn't see the results they would have on their skin or how it would make them look. That, for me, L'Oreal and their makeup filter was true evidence that AR can solve a marketing challenge right there. Now, obviously, if you look at it today, I'm sure, you know, the creative must be a bit dated, and because 2 years or 3 years is like 100 years in the tech space. But that, for me, is the true value that a brand can get by understanding who their audience is, what is the main pain points across that journey to purchase, and how can I create something that is both entertaining and meaningful at the same time. So it's a soul-searching exercise where we need to kind of move away from that you know, picture-perfect persona and truly understand who the audience is in the real life, not through just stats and, you know, papers.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess we've spoken a bit about, you know, a common thread throughout has been understanding your audience and objectives. And Vish, going back to, you know, what's next in terms of the platform, you know, I know you've spoken recently about how even using the keyboard is a learned behavior. How do you see AR being integrated into our everyday lives even more so? And I guess in what degree do you see that the future are holding for us?
Look, everyone's playing around with, like, if you look at all the big tech companies, they're all trying to figure out what the next keyboard is, right? You know, Google and Amazon have invested heavily in voice. If you look at, you know, Apple investing in you know, earphones, like everyone's playing in that kind of space. This is why, you know, 5 years, I mean, Snapchat's 9 years old. We're still a very young company. But we reclassified our positioning as a camera company. Our firm belief is that the camera is going to be the new keyboard. When that happens, I think, is less about the tech being able to handle it. It's more about when people are ready to interact in the world that way. Like right now, if you think, whenever I want information, and look, you know, this whole idea of, like, generally we are on the go, right? And if we're not on the go as people, we're double, triple screening, right? So nearly everything is done on the phone, right? Immediately, as soon as I want to know something right now, my attention is head down, my thumbs come up, and I start typing into a keyboard. That is not natural human behavior, right? Like, we did not do that as, like, that is learned. Humans have learned how to do that as a shortcut to get to what we want, right? We as a company do not believe that that's the way it should be. We believe you should be able to walk around, enjoy the world, head up, looking around, you know, smelling the roses, as it were, and able to simply point your phone at what you're interested in and get the information you need. And I think ultimately, as an end goal, I think that's where we would want to get to. Now, look, there are all kinds of, yeah, look, there's the human side of it. Are people ready to interact in the world that way? There are also kind of technical limitations, like the phones are amazing today versus what anyone thought they would be. But, you know, there's also a computational limit on how quickly you can roll that kind of technology out. But yeah, I think the technology probably already exists, and it's probably more a question right now, certainly of, well, you know, when might human behavior or willingness to adopt new ways of exploring the world develop to catch up with it?
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, some really, really great stuff there, guys. Thank you. What we might do now actually is move on to some of the answers that we've received so far for the polls that have gone out. Would you guys be able to share that? I don't know how we're doing that. Do we do that on the screen, or if we can answer the first question? Here we go. Have you engaged with AR in the last 30 days? It's a simple yes and no, and we've had 63% say yes, 37% say no. Just a bit of input from the panel here. Is that figure surprising? Is that figure aligned? How do you guys respond to that?
Well, I'd say if half of you haven't played AR, download Snapchat, stop playing with some lenses. Like, I mean, you know, like, you're not going to be able to explain what this is or understand the power of it until you actually see it for yourself. I think, you know, we can sit and talk about it all day long, and that's to some extent, our job and what we do for a living. But you know, the power of it's in your hands. Like, you know, try and learn and see how it might work for you.
John, Hattan?
Yeah. No, it's not surprising. I mean, I've used it perhaps more so in the past 6 months than I ever have in my life. I recommend it as a marketing tool. I wasn't necessarily a huge practitioner of the tool myself. I like to think I'm really busy, but it has come into handy in the past 6 months. So I'd say it is surprising and not surprising at the same time. You would think that more people would have engaged with apps like the Gucci one to try on your shoes when you couldn't go to the mall, or makeup lenses, etc. That number is going to shift in the next year, 100%.
Hattan?
Well, that's again, it's not a surprising number given that the usability of AR. So if you're talking day to day, Snapchat, stuff like that, then that number is not it's a normal number. But if you talk it from a business and brand point of view, I think that will flip.
Yeah. No, I think
this is where I think the numbers are when it comes to business reality. I would love to see that the same rates goes to business usability.
Yeah. Well, in this instance, 2 and 3 people in the room are using AR in the last month. So I guess that just shows just accessibility, but also understanding of the platform and of the technology. Are we able to pull up the second question, please? The results to the second poll. Here we go. Have you integrated AR into marketing campaigns before? So again, quite similarly, we have 65% saying yes and 35% saying no. Again, do you guys want to jump in and share your thoughts on this? Are those numbers surprising?
No, absolutely. Listen, if I just look at the way, you know, we respond to briefs or RFPs or whatnot, AR is never a component of that brief. Almost never. I almost never get a brief from a client that says, I want to build an experience and AR needs to be a part of it. It just happens to be that thing we add into the narrative, that we add, it's like that extra ingredient we add to our experience recipe, if you will. And once clients see the result of it, back to Vish's point, it's hard to think that they wouldn't ask for more after that. So that number isn't surprising to me. We would have less, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I would have thought we might see less there as well. So yeah, I guess this is an opt-in webinar, right? People that are already interested in AR, so it's a skewed sample. But at the same time, yeah, I would say, generally speaking, and you know, I work across the region, like the Saudi-based businesses, clients ask for AR, right? They ask for that. Whereas I would say more in the Dubai-based businesses that are obviously also advertising regionally, generally you find it's led more by an agency. whether it be the media agency or the creative agency, driving that as part of their creative or media proposal. So yeah, again, I think a lot of that boils down to usage themselves, right? Like, you know, I think a lot of clients are more comfortable with other platforms because they use them. Whereas in Saudi, I think we're a lot bigger as a platform. So you know, it's a lot more widely accepted. But again, I would go back to Hattan's point that he made earlier, which I thought was really right. Like, I don't think people necessarily know they're playing with augmented reality when they use Snapchat Lens or when they use you know, filters on other platforms. So yeah, it may just be that, you know, there isn't as much understanding of exactly what it is, although they are very heavy adopters and users of it from our numbers.
Has anything else to add there?
I think the guys covered it, but I would like soon to see basically brands using technology such as AR to showcase multiple layers of the product or the service or the information and so on. It's not just a filter and that's it. So I think that's where, going to question number 3, where this is going. This is where brands, I think, will take it to the next level. So
yeah, amazing, great, thanks. Can we get the last question? We'll begin to open it up to some of the Q&A that we've received, or the questions we received from the community here. But now we have an overwhelming 98% in response to, would you consider AR for upcoming campaigns? I think your job has been done, gents, on the panel. I mean, I don't know if we have anything else to add to this before we jump into other questions, but yeah, I think it's great to see the response from the attendees. I will open up to the floor now in terms of some of the questions we've received. Our first question, it's from an anonymous attendee. Are there specific sectors adopting AR faster than others? And could you call out some of these examples? Who would like to take that question?
I'll start if you guys don't mind. I would say, from our point of view here, I'm in Saudi, I would say one part of a sector that is adopting AR, the sectors that who are in need. So, for example, real estate. Real estate is a sector where they sell off maps, right? The units are not ready, and the end user is trying to imagine what the unit is going to look like through an image or a video. That's where AR steps in and has great value and reduces the sales cycle, because the people or the user or the buyer, potential buyer, have access to additional information. It allows him to put him in a moment, as we earlier mentioned it, in a moment where he can say, okay, I like this or I don't. So that's one. And training, definitely. Woohoo.
There you go. We got some more AR going on, guys.
Celebration, right? Everyone wants to do AR.
All right.
Anything else to add to that point? In terms of
so
which
the question's about which sectors does it work best for, right?
Or has adopted AR faster than others?
I think where we've seen the biggest adoption would probably be across telcos. Is quite a natural fit for them. You know, they're playing in the technology space, they're playing in the innovation space. So we've seen quite a high adoption rate across that vertical. I think beyond that, CPG is probably the most heavy in terms of usage and briefs for us. You know, whether it be the likes of Unilever or more recently, you know, Yazid Al Raji, or you know, any of the kind of big CPG players across the region, very much bought into AR, I'd say. E-com is big too, but again, much more on a performance play.
Yeah. We have another question here. Maybe John, this can be something you can jump in on as well. Do you think there's a gimmicky side to AR that reduces the ability to push sales for products with high involvement decisions, or is there a good way to avoid this?
Change the agency.
Sure.
Gimmicky is the issue. It's not the technology that's at fault. It's the person who came up with the idea in the first place. I think that's what separates a gimmicky activation, a gimmicky AR experience, or anything that's gimmicky for that matter. It's the person who actually thought of it and the person who approved it. I think there's room for gimmicks. There's room for gimmicks in everything in life, and it's important to still have them because they also help introduce a technology in a mass fashion, right? We spoke about Pokemon Go. Pokemon Go was not a gimmick whatsoever. It was a true game. It was revolutionary. But if you look at what Vish is doing right now, I think it could be considered a gimmick, but at least everyone understands exactly what AR could be at the very lower end of that spectrum. I think the best AR applications today or tomorrow will be those who find the right balance between entertaining, gimmicky perhaps a tiny bit because you still need a hook, and educational. What value does it bring to my life? How can I just break it down and make it clear and simple for whoever is using it, what the USP of that product or that brand is going to deliver in my life?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. Like the idea, like I think gimmick makes it sound negative. Like, I don't know, like brands often launch with campaigns that are just purely entertaining. Does that make them a gimmick? I don't know. Like, often brands don't need to take themselves too seriously. Some brands just fit into that kind of carefree, easy to buy, easy to drink or eat kind of category where you don't have to be overly serious. And I don't know, in those kind of spaces, sure, like it's a natural fit for AR, right? Like if, Chupa Chups come to me and say they want a lens, you can immediately think of 100 ideas, right? Like that doesn't necessarily mean that that's a bad thing, right? Like you're still augmenting their campaign. You're still making it much more interactive than it would have been with just a video, right? So already I think even if you are in the novelty space, that's one step up from where most people are, right? Now, if you are then getting into these kind of spaces where you're delivering real value and you're starting to really put the AR idea at the center of the campaign, as opposed to just one of the hubs or one of the spokes, like then that's a different kind of conversation. So yeah, like, I would say try and figure out like where the value is for your audience, and build from there.
Yeah, I think to that point, I think every idea sounds like a gimmick to start off with until you realize it's just a really good idea when it starts to prove results. So yeah, just to kind of extend on that point as well. We have a question here from Faisal. Would AR limit marketeers in terms of choosing their target audience?
Not at all. You can target for AR the same way you can target for any other digital campaign. So you can buy on demogs, on location, on interests, on previous advertising behavior. Like you can target a lens through buying on specific days, through buying, like there is no like from our end, there's no limit on that at all.
Maybe the story will have a limit if we're not talking about filters, for example, something else. The story, if that will position it as a gimmicky or not for a 50-year-old guy, right? Versus an 18-year-old boy. This is where the story, the style of the design will play a big role, I think, from an experience point of view, not from targeting as in geographically through an app. I think that will play a role.
Right, I see what you mean. Okay, yeah. So would the appeal of the campaign change? Okay, right, yeah. Again, I think it goes. I think we've said it before already. I think we have to start with an objective. We have to know who the core audience is, and kind of build from there, rather than going the other way around and coming up with a cool idea and then kind of trying to make it fit back into a strategy. If we start with the objectives and the audience, I think we'll design an experience that works for that audience, whoever that audience may be. I think it's a very versatile creative canvas, the same way a video is a very versatile creative canvas. So yeah, I think you can design experiences that work across the board.
Absolutely. We probably have time for just one more question. This actually could be interesting for both John and Hattan to jump on as well. Does AR work better as a standalone experience or as part of a bigger experience in terms of your planning?
Well, the very nature of my business, which is experiential, whether it's on or offline, by nature, AR cannot be the only component to it. I think it's a phenomenal addition to anything we would come up with, but from my personal viewpoint, it cannot be the only thing. Now, I recognize that there are moments in that, you know, shopping funnel where it makes complete sense, you know, to really put the emphasis on that. But no, it cannot be the sole, at least in my job, in my daily tasks, it cannot be the sole component. It might often become the hero component, or the one thing people walk away with or think about, you know, a couple of weeks after. But no, of course not. It cannot just be that. I'm sure Vishal would disagree with that, but
No. I'm totally down for supporting with vertical video, but it should always be a mobile-led campaign from my point of view.
I totally agree with John. I mean, standalone is definitely a recipe for failure if you position it that way in a campaign or any activity that the brand is doing. I mean, again, each technology, if we take technology by itself and everything aside, each technology will give you a type of impact given the ability of that technology. Augmented reality will allow you to put layers on it. Virtual reality will allow you to go in a world completely immersed. So that message is different than this message. That feeling and impact is different than the AR part. So definitely putting it on standalone is a recipe for failure. This is again where we push and I hope the business and the brands understand that don't do it on its own. It's a complete equation. A lot of elements are involved in the brand. The brand is not just a logo, right? It's like AR is not just, no use just AR to put everything together. And then blame AR later on or the experience. That's one angle that I think is a fact at this point. Speaking of where this is going later on, at the same time, brands should try and doing it. You need to test it. Sometimes you fail and you learn. That doesn't mean you don't do it. Do it, learn from it. With AI coming in, you'll be able to calculate how people and collect data as well. How people, this takes it again, John, to another level, right? You collect data somehow and you push it through AI, your AR experience using other technologies will go to another level. Impact will go to another level.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much, gents. I think we're running out of time now. I guess some key takeaways to consider there, and a common thread that I've seen throughout this conversation is always understand your objective. You know, focus and narrow in on your audience and understand who you want to speak to. I'll probably even throw in there, keep it simple. You know, it is an experience that needs to be memorable. Any other closing statement there you want to throw in terms of how to take it or key insight to take away from this?
Try it.
Yeah, try it.
Try it.
Sums it up, right? Try it. Yeah.
We have the trifecta. Excellent. Well, thank you very much to everyone attending, and thank you very much to the panelists. For the remaining questions, if you guys would like any, or if you want to ask any other further questions, please reach out through ArabNet, and we'll be happy to respond and make sure they get answered in detail. Otherwise, I appreciate everyone's time. I appreciate ArabNet's invitation to host the panel, and thank you. And we'll go from there. Thank you.
Right.
Thanks,
Thank
Mike.
you.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, guys.
Take care, guys.